I'm glad everybody has made it through it. So I guess we'll get started now. I want to welcome everyone to the practitioner track this morning. I want to introduce Sara Park. Sara is Vice President of End-to-End Integrated Planning at Coca-Cola North America in Atlanta. She's a passionate, result-driven, and proven leader in various commercial, financial, and supply chain planning functions. She has more than 20 years of strategic and tactical planning experience, and I think I've known her for almost all those years from when we first met at the IBF. She's worked in various industries, leading transformation processes and technologies, building teams, building capabilities. Prior to Coca-Cola, she worked for various companies, including Heinz, where she was when I first met her, Evergreen Packaging, and Georgia Pacific. Sara has a BA in English Literature from UCLA and an MBA from Case Western Reserve University. She's been published in the Journal of Business Forecasting and other professional journals, and speaks at conferences covering S&OP, process foundations, and best practices. With that, Sara.
Thank you, Mike. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me to talk about fundamentals of effective forecasting. This is our vision, Coca-Cola vision: refresh the world and make a difference. And our agenda is very, very simple today. I know I have about 20-25 minutes to do a very quick introduction, context for why I am presenting this particular topic, and importance of process, people, organization, and technology. You have heard this before. And then we'll finish up with some Q&A. So I hope you have lots of questions, and please put them into the chat so Mike can keep track of what comes up. So Coca-Cola Company does not need a lot of introduction. It is the largest non-alcoholic beverage company in the world. We were founded in 1886 here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we serve about 2 billion servings of beverages per day in over 200 countries all around the world. I work in the North America business unit, and within the Coca-Cola world, North America is USA plus Canada. And we have 3 large routes to market in our business. First is what you know very well. You're very familiar with the bottler delivered model. And within that model, we have sparkling and still categories. And I know that most of you probably know that we have Coca-Cola and Sprite and Fanta, etc. But in still categories, we have active hydration, Powerade, and vitamin water. Water brands such as Smart Water and Dasani, tea such as Go Peak, Honest Tea, and Peace Tea, as well as Dunkin' Coffee. Food service and on-premise business is pretty large as well. We can find the fountain beverages in many, many different avenues and channels. We sell finished goods as well. So when you see Smart Water and Dasani, for instance, at the airport, that's part of our portfolio. We have chilled and frozen juice and smoothie-based business as well. And then finally, we have chilled route to market and supply chain, which includes juice and tea, and value-added dairy with our Fairlife milk company. A little bit about myself, as Mike just talked about. I have over 2 decades of experience in various planning functions that include innovation and commercialization, forecasting, supply chain planning, integrated business planning, S&OP, and S&OE, sales and operations planning and execution. Again, various industries and companies, the Coca-Cola Company and CCR, I have been here for over 9 years now, Georgia Pacific and Evergreen Packaging a couple of years, and then Heinz for 10 years. Where are my passions at? I love implementing processes, standardizing the existing ones, as well as improving, continuous improvement of processes. I love implementing technologies to automate, consolidate, eliminate, and enhance our capabilities and processes. But my real passion point is around people. I mentor and coach a lot, and I'm passionate about developing the next generation of leaders and team members. So let's get right into it. So the context, I'm sure we are all feeling the impact of COVID-related market shutdowns and quarantines and startups. Depending on where you are in the world, this experience is very, very different. And of course, as consumers, we have responded in a lot of different ways, and it has created different behaviors as well as demand patterns. So a lot of our historical trends are no longer representing what future might bring. And we are seeing lots and lots of dramatic shifts in channels. So whereas my children used to get their Powerade and vitamin water at the school through their vending machines, now I am consuming a lot of multi-packs at home. For a very long time, travel was very restricted or borders were closed. So our airport business did not see any volume or very little volume. It's starting to change a lot in the US. What about all the buzz around digital transformation? Are you tired of hearing about AI, artificial intelligence, or machine learning capabilities? How many times have you heard your supply chain leadership say something around digitizing our supply chains or robotics? What about end-to-end supply chain and visibility and transparency and integration and having data flow through the entire value chain? I know I am hearing a lot about it. There are lots and lots of great research and white papers out there regarding how do we go from our current state to future state. So we have to contend with this, and it's really important that we are keeping track of what's happening in our current environment, but also what is the next thing and how do we get there. And of course, transformation requirements. The number one thing is we have to get our fundamentals right, because without our foundations, we cannot build a house on top of sand. And we have to be mindful of all aspects of transformation, which include process, of course, technology, and people, the most important ingredient. So let's start with the process. So everybody says process, 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 and that is the most important part. And absolutely, it is true. And supply chain planning processes must be standardized, repeatable, sustainable, disciplined, and not people dependent. And what does that mean? I know that Coca-Cola, for instance, we have lots of processes, but they are dependent on people and institutional knowledge and strong personalities or sponsors. We have to be people independent, and process has to be foundational, and it has to run no matter who the leader is or the participants might be. And Coca-Cola goes through lots and lots and lots of reorganizations. So as people come and go, processes must be foundational and must be there to continue to support and run the operations. How about performance? How about performance management? What we call closing the loop internally. And we live and die by what I call PDCA. So that's plan, do, check, adjust. And it goes through the entire integrated planning process, starting with sales forecasting, demand supply planning, inventory planning, etc. Everything has to start with a plan of some sort, and it might be ABP. It might be budget. It might be a monthly financial forecast. But then we need to go and execute that plan and measure. And then depending on the result, good or bad, it needs to be adjusted. And when you repeat each step every week, every month, and every quarter, you will have continuous improvement, because that adjust part is super important. Based on the results, what do we need to do differently with our plans? And all functions within supply chain and operations must adhere to these simple steps to identify the root causes for failures and address in the next cycle. And let's talk technology, because without technology supporting, enabling, and automating these processes, sometimes it is really difficult or impossible to sustain the process in a very effective, result-driven way. And number one requirement is master data accuracy. And honestly, I know that I go, oh, and roll my eyes. And I know a lot of leadership says, just go fix it. Well, it's not that simple, is it? But the importance is, with inaccurate master data, none of our fancy and extremely expensive planning technologies will work. They will not work unless we have the right input. You know, you have all heard the phrase garbage in, garbage out, and it is really true. One of the many reasons that so many of our planning professionals end up resorting to Excel, because they cannot see accurate information in our forecasting tools or supply chain planning tools, because let's say capacity is wrong, because our production rates are wrong. There's really no quick fix to this. We have to do this to run any planning systems. And I know internally we started with thousands and thousands of errors when I first started this role about 2 years ago. And we are chipping away at those thousands of errors and actually driving accountability on fixing the master data errors. And if you have a master data COE, wonderful. Then you have an accountability party or a function that can help you clean this and also maintain it going forward. Unfortunately, within Coca-Cola, the responsibilities kind of are dispersed throughout the organization. Of course, planning has lots of it under our own accountability, but we have to all work together to get that cleaned up. And then the next really important thing is single source of truth. So if you already don't have a database where you have all of the data coming out, feeding into all of your technologies, then create one. So in North America, we started out our data lake vision with AWS. Globally, we are starting to migrate toward Azure, and we started to create our little database in SQL. And the reason that we did that is because we needed to start somewhere where all of our forecasting, planning, supply chain data landed in one place. And we needed to hook all of our reporting and advanced planning systems to go in and out of this single source of truth. And it should be feeding all your software to enable and support your processes to make them less manual and more sustainable. How frustrating is it when you go into an hour meeting and in the first 20, 30 minutes, you're arguing over whose number is right? That's very ineffective. And when you have a database with validated data all in one place, it's a great place to start. And you have to continue to validate and ensure accuracy so that you're not arguing over whose number is right. How about easy and flexible usable technology? So I make a really big deal out of understanding and assessing the maturity of your organization, as well as processes and leadership support. Because chances are none of this is going to come free, right? There will have to be some sort of a budget, some sort of an investment, and the solution sophistication can vary based on your organization and process maturity. Do not overbuy or overcreate your capabilities, because your planners are not going to be able to handle it, or organization is going to fail. And then we are right back to using Excel again. And that's why you have to really understand what your teams are doing in Excel. I think in the last 20 years, I have seen lots and lots of different systems come and go. And a lot of times we try to bend our processes to fit into the technology and how it was set up. And I have heard multiple times VPs and executives say these words. Well, we're going to have to adhere to the process that's designed by the software company. We're not going to have a choice. Unfortunately, that's not how we work as human beings. So we end up right back in Excel. So think about bending the technology to support your processes. And that's a little bit different in terms of approach when it comes to technology selection and also implementation. And flexibility is an important component of successful technology implementation, because what I have seen painfully over and over again is inflexible hierarchies, multiple integrations between different modules within the same software that require batching processes. And make sure that user adoption is one of your success metrics. And then my favorite part, people and organization. And I see this over and over and over again. People make all the difference. And I am seeing this play out right now on my team. We have a very sophisticated optimization software that we tried to implement about 18 months ago. And we didn't have an expert in-house to really not only implement it, but also leverage it to its best capabilities. And I hired that expert 3 months ago, and he has taken it to a whole different level because he has experience, he has expertise, and he understands the business as well as the technology. So major trends such as RPA and offshoring will make it tactical and transactional work obsolete. And the way that companies like SaaS and other software companies are developing AI and ML capabilities, my God, I'm sure we'll see things that are not even imaginable right now. And I just watched a really interesting documentary on YouTube called, it was the Go Worldwide Championship against the AI. And I have a reference at the end. I highly recommend it because my goodness, nobody thought that that was going to be possible, and we have already cracked it. It's really important to think about your team and your function and what you are there to deliver. So number one, you have to be very, very clear on the purpose of your team and what you're doing. Then you have to create opportunities for them to learn and develop skill set. So master what they are doing, and then give them all the autonomy in the world, because once they know what they're there to do and they have the skill set, then they should be able to do their jobs. So I have a few practical pieces of advice. Number one is intellectual curiosity. Especially in this environment, we have to continue to seek and learn and keep the growth mindset. So I have little, notes there. I am actually specifically referencing certain books and thought leadership around this. Do not stay siloed, because boundaries will continue to blur. And you need to understand what, the noise, what the impact of your upstream and downstream functions are doing, and the impact that you're making on a daily basis. What about your team? Do you understand the strengths that you need to continue to leverage and the development areas? And how do you identify and eliminate blind spots? And find your passion and love what you do. I have another book that I have a recommendation for. And the next part is really important, because we are talking a lot about automation and leveraging RPA capabilities. So understand where these AI, ML, robotic capabilities start and end, because the human part will never be eliminated. We need to all coexist and be human. We are all human in the end and know how to help and support one another, lead with empathy, kindness, encouragement, recognition, and celebration. So the references and recommendations that I have already spoken to, number one is a book called Drive by Daniel Pink, and one of the best books on how to motivate your teams and then keep them motivated. And that's where purpose, mastery, and automation came from. The next is Mindset, the New Psychology of Success by Dr. Dweck. And this is a practical approach to keep your teams learning and developing. It's called growth mindset, where we can say, yeah, I don't know that, and not be threatened to admit that we don't know something and are willing to go and explore and experiment and fail and try again. Actually, I found that book to be incredibly powerful for raising my children and how to coach and teach them on dealing with failures and things not going their way. The third reference is Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. And this is to find your North Star, if you will. And it's what you're good at, what you love to do, what you can get paid for, and what you're contributing to your overall community. And I found that concept incredibly powerful to all of our happinesses. And then the documentary that I was referencing earlier, it's called Alphago versus Kim Sedol, who is the Korean World Go champion. And this documentary was made about 5-6 years ago, and it's free on YouTube. And it basically pits AI against human worldwide champion and what happens in a 5-set match. And what he actually says about AI, I found his insights to be very meaningful, because he says, yeah, we're not going to win against a capability that learns on its own. And over time, they're going to be dominating what we do. So we're not necessarily going to beat how, let's say, machine learning forecasting algorithms can eventually become so powerful that it might eliminate my team's need to come up with our own forecast. However, the way we collaborate internally and externally with our bottling partners, as well as customers and other functions, that cannot be replaced by robots and AI and ML. So that's it. The fundamentals are still exactly the same, even in this crazy, dynamic, volatile, changing environment. We still have to have strong processes. We still have to have good organizations and functions and people. And we have to have technologies that actually support and enable and take us to the next level. So thank you so much for your attention so far. And please connect with me on LinkedIn for continued conversations and discussions. And I am open to any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Sara. We've got a couple more minutes here. One thing I would want to ask is, I can see Coca-Cola is very fortunate to have someone like you in this leadership role as a vice president, heading this and really helping nail down the processes and so on. But in general, I think this is a big struggle for a lot of organizations. Thinking about forecasting specifically, I look at the practice of forecasting today, and I look at the start of my career like 35 years ago, and all the dumb things, all the mistakes and bad practices I did. And yet, when I speak to clients and so on, I see so many of those same things being repeated today. That's maybe more of a comment more than a question, but is there hope? It's kind of very frustrating to me to see that it's so hard to make progress in these areas.
I agree. And thank you for your kind words. I think number one thing is finding the right sponsor within the organization and finding the right champion. I have been very lucky, especially at Coca-Cola, to have had so many good bosses who didn't understand everything about the importance of forecasting, but then they were willing to give me a chance to prove out how important it was. So being able to find the right sponsor, champion, boss, to really understand the importance, I think is the first step. And then, you know, Mike, you and I were kind of chatting around the difficulties of handling politics. And I'm not going to lie to you, we are not immune to that. And there are all kinds of gamesmanship being played, especially around sales forecast, right? Or financial forecast that we are to deliver versus all of the demand, supply, operational things that we have to handle. We have stayed connected because I'm responsible for all of it, but then everybody's very clear on the assumptions. So make sure you are documenting assumptions and closing that PDCA loop every single month, because otherwise you're not going to be able to eliminate what is not working and move continuously toward what should be.
Great. Hey, we've got one question in the chat. And this will be our last question before we move to Dawn. Are you able to see that in the chat? Right? Do you have that, Sarah? Okay. This is from Virginia. Thanks for your talk. One question I have is, how do you deal with demand planning at different levels? There's SKUs, stores, etc. Is it a unique team working at all levels, or do you have different teams?
Nope, I have one team who is responsible for all of it. And we implemented an extremely flexible forecasting technology. And we are able to forecast at the level that makes most sense based on accuracy. But then we are also able to manipulate SKU level, DC level, demand signal as needed, or we can do it at a very high, you know, brand or segment or package level, and they all come together. So you have to make sure that your team is responsible for all of it and understand how different levels might be different, but then still roll up to a level that makes sense.
Right. Hey, with that, we're going to wrap up this session and move over to Dawn. But anyway, thank you again, Sarah, and be sure to connect with her on LinkedIn.